of different things. It's always hard for me to come up with a bio, but I generally talk and speak and write and educate around topics like branding, like operations and self-care. And when I try and put it down into, I guess, encapsulated, it comes up with the title of Ritual Builder. I like helping people build rituals, and I like helping organizations build meaningful rituals for work and life. And today I'm going to talk to you about self-care and going beyond the hashtags. So, don't know how many of you are familiar with hashtag self-care. And if you're not, I'll just take you down a little walk of what you might see on that hashtag. And it's not playing a video, but I can tell you some of the things. So there are Powerpuff Girls there. You'll see toy stories. This is all under hashtag self-care. There's things about like what are the best emoji combinations for you to use, facials, different ways for you to paint your nails. So a ton of things under hashtag self-care, and if you were trying to use that to come up with a definition of self-care, you'd probably end up asking the question, what is self-care? And if I do my job by the end of this, you should be able to answer that question. But since we're already in Instagram world, I'm going to do a little bit more of an introduction to myself, looking at some of my old Instagram posts. So we're going to do a TBT, a throwback Thursday, but it's Saturday, so I guess it's TBS. So this is me when I graduated college. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm from America. I went to Vanderbilt and I studied human and organizational development. Ooh, that's always a mouthful. And Spanish, and I actually double majored, but that's too much for me to say both of my majors. So I always have not really liked school that much. I like learning. I did decently at it, but I was always craving the part where I could actually apply what I learned. So as soon as I graduated, I was like, okay, bye, time to go to the real world. And when I went to the real world, my commute looked like this. So this is a metro train. It's the commuter train that takes you out to the suburbs, and I was commuting anywhere from like 2 to 2.5 hours every day. It was a lot. I was in a leadership development program, and in some ways it was really great. I was being poured into and I was being taught a lot of valuable information. But then as I was looking at the people who were directors and VPs and even senior VPs of the organization I was working at, I realized I did not want to be them. They were working over holidays, they were working on nights and weekends, and not like on a fun, exciting project. It was because there was always this looming deadline that they were trying to chase after, and honestly a really arbitrary deadline that someone just said, hey, by June 15th, and everyone's like killing themselves to get something done by June 15th. Not a lot of self-care, not a lot of work-life balance, at least in those higher levels. And so I kind of was like, I don't think that's where I want to go. So I left that company. I actually went to become the first full-time employee at a health and wellness startup. I was their VP of operations, and it was so much fun. I was building things from the ground up every day. I was getting to like think of an idea in the morning and then execute it sometimes that day. A lot of flying by the seat of our pants, and it was a lot of fun. I also was getting married that year. I also had a business that I was running on the side, and I was definitely feeling bold. I was like, okay, I can do a lot of stuff, but I was also very, very quickly burning out. I wasn't good at practicing self-care. And if you can relate to any of this, if you can relate to seeing the seniors in your company and saying, I don't know if I want to have the same type of lifestyle that they have. I want their salary, I want their title, but I don't want to have to move up the ranks and lose my social life or lose any sense of taking care of myself. Or you can relate to me and trying to do all the things and not knowing how to take care of yourself in the midst of it. I want you to know that you're not alone. This whole phenomenon is bigger than me, and it's bigger than you in the audience who can relate to it. It's bigger than all of us, actually. So I pulled some statistics, and to start, 72% of millennial women were like, yeah, self-care, something that I need to get better at this year. They put it on their list of resolutions. 74% of adults here in the UK said that they felt so stressed at some point in the last year that they just honestly did not know how to cope with it. 57% of the working days that are lost, again, here in the United Kingdom, are because of stress and anxiety, and I believe this is from 2018. Well, I guess it has to be 2017 or 2018. It's too early to know unless you're super stressed in the last 2 weeks. And then finally, 64% of millennials say that they feel overwhelmed at work on a daily basis. So that's a lot of stress, that's a lot of anxiety, and that's a lot of people not really knowing how to practice self-care, not knowing how to take care of themselves. So for me, what changed my journey, what helped me be able to fight burnout was actually taking a bath, as silly as it sounds. So I remember it distinctly. It was a Sunday night, and I was doing work for my side business at the time, and I was doing client work, and then I was looking ahead at what I needed to do in my day job in the coming week, and I was just, when you sit at your computer and you're like kind of doing stuff, but really you're not doing anything and you're just wasting your time. It was one of those things where I was just pressing keys and then feeling stressed and more stressed, and I just finally shut the laptop. It's like, okay, I'm gonna take a bath. So, close the laptop, I get out some Epsom salt, and I take a bath. Actually, first I took an Instagram story because it kind of felt important at the time. I'm like, I'm gonna mark that I'm taking this bath. So, took the Instagram story, didn't look at my laptop or my phone until Monday morning. And it felt amazing. It was like finally this peaceful transition from the week that was into the week that was coming, and I kept doing it. And this was my first self-care ritual. So now, almost every Sunday, I take this bath, I close my laptop, close my phone, still take the Instagram story because it's tradition now, but that was my first entree into self-care, and then it became something that I wanted to talk to other people about, and I wanted to help other people develop and cultivate, and that's how I ended up here today. So for me, the bath is what changed everything. And as I was doing this journey of self-care work, I kind of had to come up with my own definition. There's more technical or medical definitions, but obviously looking at #self-care teaches you that self-care is Powerpuff Girls and Toy Story 4, so needed something a little bit more workable. And what I came up with is that self-care is listening to your body, and it's responding in the most loving way possible. It seems really simple, but as most of you can probably attest to, it's also really, really difficult. So let's just start with the listening piece, because I can almost hear a lot of you asking me mentally. I can see the wheels turning. So how do I actually listen to my body? So we're gonna try something, and I'm gonna tell you a couple tools that you can use to start listening to your body. And it can look like different things. The first thing that we're gonna try is stillness. So I love to have my brain constantly consuming something. I will be listening to a podcast episode or have Netflix on in the background or music. I just like something always there, honestly, to drown out my thoughts, which is not a healthy practice. And so one of the first steps that I will take when I'm trying to listen to my body is either to meditate or just simply to do some deep breathing. So if you're comfortable, I'd love to invite you to just take 3 deep breaths with me. You want to roll your shoulders back, find a comfortable seat if you're able to get your feet flat on the floor. And we're just going to breathe in through our nose, out through our mouth, at your own pace. And I'm going to close my eyes because I'm standing up here and it's going to be weird to see all of you guys breathing. So, in through your nose, out through your mouth. Now, 3 deep breaths. Ready? And when you're ready, you can blink open your eyes if you have them closed. And so sometimes when I am doing that deep breathing, I'll find that there's now space for an emotion that I didn't realize was there, or something that I didn't realize was bothering me, and just because I kind of pressed pause on everything else in the external world, I could actually start to process what was going on. Sometimes nothing comes up, and that's fine too. Deep breathing in itself is really good at helping you flush out the cortisol in your system, which is the stress hormone. So in one scenario, you might realize something that comes up and you can start to care for yourself. In another scenario, you've actually just cared for yourself just by the act of deep breathing. So that's one way that you can start listening to your body. The second way is through observation. So actually starting to see the patterns that happen in your life. Is there something that happens to you every time you have a one-on-one with your manager and you notice that you have a certain emotion or feeling or response, or even a type of food that you eat? How does that produce a response in your body? For me, it was migraines. I used to get, I still get them, but I get these really bad migraines where like my head is pounding to the point that sometimes I will throw up, which is gross, but that's the reality of what happens. It's not a fun situation. And when these started when I was younger, my mom would always encourage me, okay, you had a migraine, so I want you to document everything that you can remember eating the day before or the couple days before, what you were doing, what was the environment like before. And I realized that I was getting these migraines when it was unusually hot weather, when I hadn't upped my water intake to meet that hotter weather, and then also the cherry on top was when I hadn't slept enough the night before. So if it's just hot, or if I just don't drink enough water, it's fine, but it's like that combination of the three things that makes the really bad migraines, and I figured that out through observation. And then the last piece is reflection, so an intentional looking back. And the way that I like to reflect is to first start with picking an interval of time. So it could be for the day, the month, the year, whatever you want it to be, but it just helps to get specific so that you know the point of time that you are evaluating. And then from there, you're going to ask yourself two questions. The first is, when did I experience tension in whatever interval of time? So when did I experience tension yesterday or last month? And then the second question that you're going to ask is, when did I feel most supported? Or when did I feel most cared for? And those two questions really can help lay the foundation of moving into the response. So those are the three ways that you can use to start listening to your body. Stillness, so meditation or just breathing. Observation, looking for those patterns. And then reflection, asking yourself these questions. And if you remember my definition of self-care, so listening to your body and responding in the most loving way possible. You gotta get to the responding part now. And I'm gonna talk to you about two different ways that you can respond. And before I do that, I just wanna pause and say that I'm so passionate about self-care because I'm not great at it, so I'm constantly having to develop it. And when I teach workshops or when I get to speak about it, I love learning from everyone else about what their practices are so I can start to use them or try them or experiment in my own life and see if those also feel good to me. So the reason why I chose this photo of a woman watering her plants is because last weekend I was teaching a workshop about self-care. We were going around and sharing some of our different rituals, and one woman shared that for her, she's made this self-care ritual of watering her plants. So it's this time where it's almost meditative, and she's just only focused on nurturing this life, this other living entity that she's chosen to brighten up her home. And just in being focused on that, that's her self-care ritual. And there are so many different things that can be rituals that maybe you don't even think of as rituals, like watering your plants. And for me, a ritual just really needs to have two components. So the first is a clear intention, and then the second is actually the components, what makes up the ritual. So to give you a couple examples, we can go back to my bath. So for the bath, my intention is to move between, sorry, I feel like I'm spitting on the microphone or something. So my intention, sorry the person after me, we can clean it up in between. So for the bath, my intention is to move gracefully between 1 week into the next week. And then the components are, I have to actually take a bath. I do take the Instagram story beforehand, because if I don't, people are like, did you take a bath this week? So no, I just do that. And then I have to not look at my phone or my laptop until the next week. So those are the three components, and there's a lot of flexibility within that. So 1 week I might journal in the bathtub, another week I might be reading, sometimes I'll sit there for 10 minutes, sometimes I'll soak for an hour. All of that is flexible, but I'm completing my ritual. I feel like I'm caring best for myself when those components are there. So if we look at morning rituals, which probably a lot of us have heard about morning rituals, I'm not going to be prescriptive about whether or not you should have one, but we can use that as an example. So if you were to create a morning ritual, you might say that your intention is to start your day with joy. And you might say, I'm going to do that by having some time where I'm writing, moving my body, and having some time when I'm reading. And maybe on your best day, you are reading, I don't know, you're reading for like 20 minutes, you're going on a 45-minute run, and then maybe doing yoga afterwards, and then you're writing morning pages, and you're doing like 3 pages of morning pages. That could be like your ideal scenario. Judging by faces here, some people are like, this is not my ideal scenario. That is okay too. But, so that could be reading morning, I get up and do that. Really remember your components, the things that you said that you wanted to do were just to read, to write, and to move your body. So if you wake up super late, that doesn't mean you have to throw out your morning ritual. That means you can adjust. So maybe for reading, you read a poem that really inspires you. For movement, you do 2 sun salutations. And then for writing, you write 5 things you're grateful for. And you've got that done within like 10 minutes, maybe even less. So the point of the ritual is not to say, I failed at the ritual, which is actually the opposite of self-care. It's not to say I failed because I didn't do this elaborate thing. It's to have flexibility, to know the things that actually make you feel good. And if you're wondering about that, you can go back to your answer to the question for when you felt most supported and to start implementing those intentionally into your day. Really, when you look at rituals, rituals are proactive. So that's you looking at the things, either the places where you know that you're experiencing tension and starting to add some positive, some supportive practices there, or looking at places where you say, oh, I feel really supported when I do X, Y, Z thing, and intentionally plugging those into your day before you need them. So when you look at rituals, those are really your proactive forms of self-care. And now we're going to move into what you do when you're having kind of like a 911. I actually don't know what you say for emergencies here, but 911 is like when you call the police or whatever. But whatever you would call for an emergency situation. I just realized I should have asked someone that before. That's your self-care toolkit. So that's what you use in emergencies. And these are different practices that you're just having a really bad day, maybe you got some feedback that you didn't feel great about, or you've just been feeling really emotional about something, or you could just be tired, whatever the situation is, but you need something right now and it can't wait till your next planned self-care ritual. And I'm just gonna share some of the things that might show up in your toolkit. These are different for everyone, but like I said, I love to share and to learn from other people because there are practices that you might not even think to include in your self-care toolkit. One thing that I like for everyone to include is breathing. We have to do it to stay alive anyway, but it's so good for you. It's really good for you. So take that time to breathe. Even as little as a minute can have such a positive impact on the stress hormones of your body. The next one is calling a loved one. I love doing this one. I'm 26. I still talk to my parents almost every day. Sometimes it's for self-care reasons, sometimes it's just to talk to them about the weather, but for me personally, that's a big part of my self-care toolkit. Another one is having a dance party, and this is what I do when I need to feel confident. I actually had a dance party in the bathroom before I came up here. I was listening to Lizzo and Missy Elliott, in case anyone wants to know like good dance party songs, at least for me. But that's something that I'll do before I have to press send on a scary email or do something where like I need confidence. For me personally, as someone who grew up dancing, dance parties work really well for me. I also will say that I work from home, so you might need to adjust this if you work in an office setting, unless you want to do some group self-care. Another one is creating. So whatever art form it is, and you don't have to feel like an artist, but be drawing something, painting, writing poetry, doing something creative instead of being in that consumption mode can be a really helpful form of self-care. Next is walking in nature. I live in Chicago. There's not a ton of nature nearby, but I like to go for walks. I live not too far from the lake, and just seeing some trees and some grass feels really good. There's also science that shows that it is actually really good for you, so it's not just a feeling, it's true. And then, I cannot see, writing. So, taking time to journal. I personally will sometimes just give myself like 5 minutes to write things out. It doesn't necessarily have to be writing your feelings, but just processing. It could be lists if that's calming to you. Whatever form of writing feels like self-care to you. Another great one is gratitude. So writing what you're thankful for. Sometimes, especially when you're in a situation where it just feels like everything is going to crap, taking 2 minutes to say, okay, what are all the things I'm grateful for? You will feel so good at the end of it, and you probably will want to keep going. And it doesn't mean that all of a sudden your world is going to be perfect and everything's going to be better, but it's a great mood booster. It's a great form of self-care. And then finally, if you have a furry friend, if you have a pet, or even go to a pet store, just petting another creature that is so excited that you exist is great for them, but it's also really, really great for you. So that's something that I like to do when I need a little bit of self-care, is just cuddle with my dog. This is not actually my dog. My dog's cuter. So hopefully by now you can answer the question of what self-care is. This is my definition. Feel free to take it and make it your own, but my definition is listening to your body and responding in the most loving way possible. And just to recap, some ways for listening are stillness, observation, and reflection. Reflection is with those 2 questions, so picking the interval of time, thinking about where you experienced tension, and then also where you felt supported or cared for. And then you actually start to respond through rituals, so those proactive forms of self-care, and then through your toolkit, so those in-the-moment things that you can use when you're kind of in a self-care emergency situation. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention this last part, which is that our self-care needs change. So when I talked about the morning ritual before, I used to have like a pretty extensive self-care ritual in the morning, and I would get up at 5. I'm actually a morning person, so it wasn't that awful, but I would get up at 5 and I would do all these things, and that was when I was still in my full-time job, so it made sense for me to get up earlier. I wasn't staying up as late, and it really served me in that time. Now that I don't have my full-time job, I have no reason to get up at 5 in the morning, and I don't really want to. So the thing that is most of service to me is to not set an alarm in the morning and to let my body wake up naturally. And then I'll do a practice that feels good to me. It might be taking a longer walk with my dog. It might feel like writing or journaling, but I'm not doing any better or worse at self-care because my ritual changed. I'm just continuing to listen, and I'm continuing to respond in the most loving way possible. And that's what I want for all of you too. So thank you for having me and letting me talk about self-care. Here, if you go to bit.ly/YouGotSelfCare, I have kind of a worksheet that overviews what I talked about, and then a little 31 days of self-care checklist that you can use of like different practices you can try. It's kind of fun if you aren't sure about what self-care practices to do, and some of them might surprise you. So thank you again, and if you have any questions, you can DM me on Twitter or Instagram, or pull me aside here, and I'd love to talk to you about self-care and maybe steal some of your self-care practices. Thank you.